Welcome to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, the home for financial advice in a language you can understand. Created by Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial, he and his team of certified financial planner professionals will discuss timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. And now, get ready for this week's edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial.
Welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Marion Gilman.
And we're here to provide you with some financial advice in a language you can understand. Well, we're approaching we're in springtime right now, and that means a lot of graduations in front of us.
Yeah, May is here, right?
It is, and a lot of kids are graduating from college. Hopefully they have a job lined up and not always just moving into home.
Well, you got two graduating this year.
I do have two graduating.
Double trouble.
Yeah, Corey's graduating from Babson. Second week of May, and Noah is graduating from Boston University with his master's in biomedical engineering. And yes, both of them have jobs, and both of them have an apartment. They're not coming home.
that was my son's goal, to actually be on his own as soon as he possibly could. He did come home for a month, but it was just a month.
Yeah,
so
you know, I was at Babson College last week. Christian and I have been involved in a mentorship program for some students that are taking one of the financial planning courses there. And I had the opportunity to speak to a broader class of those people in that team, plus others, about financial planning, about what we do as a profession. But this was a class made up of seniors. And there was probably like 25 kids in that class. And it was such a different experience from the experience I had last year when I was making a presentation about this time at Merrimack College to a bunch of seniors, where that class of 25 or 30 students, when I asked how many people have lined up a job when they graduate, and there was about 4 hands that went up. At Babson, It was 100%.
Babson's noted for being
90.
They have good recruiting on campus. They're actually very good.
Yeah, Babson sells themselves as we have a 99% placement rate for students.
Right.
And all these students going into graduation, which is a couple weeks away, they all have jobs. But the bigger part of it was, how many of you are moving home rather than moving into apartments? And about 80+% are absolutely moving home. And like you and I have talked about this, when we were in high school, if a teacher said to you, when you graduate high school or college or trade school, whatever it is, how many of you are moving home once you have your first job? And I don't think there was a single hand that had any expectation of staying home, right?
Right. You know, a lot of kids have to move home. So my son went to school in the Midwest. So the reason he moved home was because he had to look for a place. He wasn't here to look for a place while he was in school. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so I understand that. And I understand with Babson, you know, those kids come even internationally, right?
I think it's 45% of the class is international.
Yeah. So a lot of them have to, you know, look for an apartment once they actually graduate because they're going someplace else. But we never wanted to stay home. No. I mean, that was, you know, was just awful.
You know, so here's some advice that we thought we would offer up to our listeners, and you can share this with your college-age students or anybody who you might feel like sharing it with, is many of these students are about to get their first real paycheck. Yes. Not like working a few hours in a McDonald's or the local convenience store or something. They're actually going to get a real paycheck. And that paycheck is going to include perhaps benefits, things like being able to participate in a retirement plan, participate in life insurance, health insurance, and a variety of different other things.
All kinds of good stuff.
So one of the first questions that generally pops up to a new employee is the opportunity to participate in the retirement plan. And many students say, well, what's a retirement plan?
Exactly.
Maybe you can share that.
Absolutely. So, you know, the optimum benefit, I think, that you can participate in as a young employee is a 401k. So a 401k is a workplace retirement plan, and 401k is the designation for a for-profit company. A 403b is the designation for a retirement plan for a nonprofit company. They both have essentially the same rules. One is just for-profit and one is a nonprofit. But those are incredibly important to start participating in those as soon as you possibly can. The earlier you start, you get in a habit of money being taken out of your paycheck, going directly into this workplace plan, so you never see it, never hits your checking account, you can't spend it, and realistically, you can actually defer $23,500 this year in 2025 into a workplace retirement account.
Now, chances are a student starting their first job is not going to defer that much money.
Of course not.
But certainly if a student could say, I'm willing to allocate at least 10% of my pay. And a lot of students, I mean, I was asking at Babson what the average salary was for all these kids that were graduating.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they weren't actually disclosing what it actually was, but I know at Babson they reported from last year the average starting salary was $72,000.
You know, that's a great salary for somebody who's never made any money before.
Right. I mean, starting basically entry level at $72,000.
Exactly.
I mean, think about it. If you could save $7,000 over the course of a year, $7,000, you know, it's, I don't know, it's a few $100s every month. And we've always said that money you don't see is money you won't spend.
Exactly.
So let's use the example of $50,000 as a salary. We won't use the 72, we'll use 50,000 because that's basically $1,000 a week, right? $1,000 a week, roughly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's say you wanted, if you were going to get paid $1,000 a week and you said, I want to put 10% of my pay into a 401k plan. Now, we will talk about in a minute the difference between what's called a traditional 401k plan and a Roth 401k plan. But to start, let's just talk about the fact that if you were to get $1,000 a week, you said, I want to designate $100, because that would be 10% of my pay, to go to a 401k. So how does that work, Marion, from a traditional 401k perspective?
From a traditional 401k perspective, that $100 comes out of your salary pre-tax and goes into that 401k plan. Pre-tax meaning it will not be taxed at all. So it goes in, you don't see it, and the remaining $900 per week goes to you, or after all withholdings. But that $100 is saved.
That's right. So the 900, so you get the 1,000, you take off 100. Now, you're not taxed on it now. You will be taxed on it later.
Right.
But it's not now you're not taxed on it. There's $900.
Right.
And so through that $900, now they're going to take out federal taxes and state taxes and FICA taxes and all the other types of deductions.
So let's say you net $600 after all those taxes are taken out. So you got $100 in the 401k, you have $600 in your pocket to spend. Take home, correct. After the taxes, as Mark described.
So now, let's look at the other option where you have the opportunity to participate in a Roth 401k.
Right.
What happens and makes that different, Marion?
So the Roth 401k actually comes out after taxes. So that you get the full $1,000 on a weekly basis, and taxes are deducted from that full $1,000. So rather than in our previous example, we said about $300 of taxes, et cetera, were deducted. Well, this might be $320 are deducted. So now it's, you know, after taxes, if you actually take that same 100 and put it into a Roth 401k, what happens is you end up with $580 rather than $600.
Right.
$20 difference, not a big deal, but the benefits of a Roth are incredible.
And what are those?
Those benefits are that $100 that went into the Roth grows tax deferred throughout all your years of working, or until you reach age 59 and a half. And at age 59 and a half, if you wait till then to take the money out, there's no tax on the money you put in or any of the growth over those years. So, that's huge.
So think of it this way, just simply, money that you put into a Roth grows tax-free forever. Forever. And whenever you want to take the money out, after 59 and a half, you can take the earnings. But if for some reason you wanted to take out what you put in before age 59 and a half, you can actually get that money out too. But that's more of a technicality.
That's a little more complex for a 403 for a 401k. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, but now let's talk about this idea. Sometimes people say, well, what about the match? I hear sometimes my employer offers a match.
Right, and that's the other thing, and that's why you never want to totally dismiss a 401k or 403b, because very frequently the employer will say, well, we're going to match what you put in. And that match could be, let's say, if you put in 3% of your salary, they will match 3%. Or it could be, if you put in 6%, they will match 50% up to 6%. So you would get a 3% match. Same thing, but different strategy. So you need to put in 6% to get that full match.
So, language you can understand again, a match is free money.
Absolutely.
It's really
free.
all it is. It is absolutely free money. Now, if someone said to you, would you like some free money? Chances are you're going to say yes. But the only way to get that free money, in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases in a retirement plan, you need to be a participant in the retirement plan to be the beneficiary of a particular match. Now, there are other retirement plans where you don't have to participate. There's a lot of different rules. We're trying to simplify this as best possible.
Absolutely. And one of the things that employers have done in the past several years is that they now, rather than opting into a 401k or 403b, they actually ask you to opt out if you don't want to be in it. So in other words, what they do is they automatically enroll you in their 401k or 403b plan. And they actually set a very low salary deferral. It's usually around 3%, sometimes 5%, but it's relatively low. And they found that this works really well because people don't take action. And that's why they started it. So it's, you have to do something in order to enroll in a 401k. And when you had to do something to enroll, I think almost 50% of employees just didn't enroll.
Right. They just weren't listening to that part of it. They were more interested in, I want to start getting used to my full paycheck.
Right. Or they didn't understand what the benefit was of saving for retirement, so they just never did it.
Or they got bad information, and we see that happen a lot.
Right.
You're not getting the proper information, because the other thing that happens is when you enroll in a 401k plan, your company will give you some type of a 401k booklet, a plan document they oftentimes call it. And along with the plan document is a whole listing of investment options.
Right.
And you might see all these investment options and you go, this is just too complex. I wouldn't know how to even start investing my money. Well, if you're just starting out, you don't need complexity in trying to select what you want to invest in. And generally, 401k plans offer some really nice consolidated options that maybe you can explain, Marion.
Right. So typically within that plan, there is something, it's either called a target date fund or a lifestyle fund. But the way you can hone in on it is it has a date. So it will say, let's say, you're in 2025, it might say a target date 2065. 40 years down the road, so you're assuming you're going to work, maybe not at that company, but you are going to work for 40 years. So this mutual fund, it's typically a mutual fund, it has a whole conglomeration of investments in there. And it's geared for long-term growth because you have 40 years that you're saving for retirement. So you want to be primarily in the stock market. But this same fund, if you keep putting money in, and as you get older and closer to retirement, it will actually start to add in more bonds, making the fund a little bit more conservative when you're, say, around age 50. And then as you get towards 65, it's going to be even more conservative, so you're ready for retirement when you actually get there. So you don't have to do anything. They manage it for you. Frequently, these funds are very good, and a lot of times it is the default option in the plan. So you don't even have to select a fund. It would be selected for you.
Yeah, that lifestyle fund is usually a collection of a whole bunch of funds that are part of this portfolio, rounded out to call it, if you will, one fund. And this idea of being invested more in the stock market when you're younger and have the glide path of that lifestyle fund transition more towards bonds and cash as you're approaching retirement might be an approach that you want to take 30, 40 years down the road. But right now, you want to be invested in the stock market. You're young. You have the opportunity to deal with the ups and downs and the volatility, and it makes sense, and you don't need to overcomplicate it.
Not at all.
Because think about it. Even if you were to take 10% of a $50,000 paycheck, that's $5,000. And let's say your employer matched, I don't know, $1,000 or $2 on that. So maybe that's $7,000 in the plan. You don't need to have 6, 8, 12 different investment options. One that's pretty well diversified is probably good enough for you.
Absolutely.
And that's what we call financial advice in a language you can understand. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking to yourself, geez, maybe I am starting my first job and I need some advice on how to set up my 401k plan, how to enroll in the life insurance program that's available through work, how to make sure that I have the proper tax withholding from my pay stub, all of the different issues that pop up. Will you have to participate in health insurance? Maybe you're on your parents' health insurance. Maybe you go on the company health insurance, and a variety of other options. That's what we do as part of our work as financial planners at Freedman Financial. So if now's the time for you to get serious about your financial planning, whether it's for your children, for you, for your grandparents, for anybody for that matter, we are here in Peabody. Our phone number, 978-531-8108. That's 978-531-8108. Or if you just like what you hear on this show, you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter that provides financial advice in a language you can understand. You can get access to our website, which tells you the fees that we charge, the types of clients we serve, how we do financial planning, how we handle investment portfolios, who we are, all that stuff. All you need to do, though, is go to our website, freedmanfinancial.com. That's Freedman.
2 E's and a D.
Financial.com, and that's going to do it for us this week. Have a wonderful week, everybody. We'll be back again next week with dollars and cents and more financial advice in a language you can understand. Have a great day.
Enjoy.
During today's episode of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, your host may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.